Hey there, I'm Anthony from DESelect, and I'm very excited for today's interview because we are hosting Guilda Hilaire. We talk about her path to becoming a senior manager of product marketing at Salesforce and how you can connect with the Salesforce marketing community. If you have a question for us, just leave it in the comments. Relax, sit back, and enjoy. Hi, Guilda. Welcome to this series.
Thank you for having me. So excited to be here.
Great, and really, it's our pleasure. Could you please introduce yourself to our viewers?
So my name is Guilda Hilaire, and I am the Senior Product Marketing Manager at Salesforce. The community considers me as like their agent or their handler. I focus primarily on Trailblazer community programs for Marketing Cloud and for Pardot.
Great. Thank you for providing a short bio there. And I would say, yes, you're definitely an agent for the community, if not the champion of champions. That's also how this series started in the end. We all know that you do a lot for the Salesforce community. Can you briefly describe what is your main focus right now?
Well, I was a customer prior to joining Salesforce. I was actually a customer for well over 14 years, focused on ExactTarget, which is now Salesforce Marketing Cloud platform. So as a customer, I always wanted to, you don't know what you don't know. So I always was looking for ways to be active in the community, from writing blogs to wanting Salesforce to champion my ideas or support my ideas, to attending every single event that they were having, whether they were virtual, whether they were conferences, whether they were invitations from account executives to network with other like-minded people. So right now, that's exactly what I do, right? I build programs where customers, whether you're a legacy customer, whether you're a new customer, but you get that opportunity to feel like you're not alone, in this island by yourself, trying to navigate the Marketing Cloud platform. So I build programs, virtual programs, to really help educate the community on features that they might not even know about, or it could be features that they already know about, right? Because we have a lot of legacy users. They know it all, but you don't know what you don't know. So putting together these programs, it gives not only internal product folks, but also the community a chance to really help, transfer that knowledge that they have on a particular feature or functionality. So it's really building programs to bring the community together and educate the community.
Yes, and I would say that it's working because I think that community is really something unique to Salesforce, this open ecosystem where you do have that community feeling, like people showing off with their badges and their certificates and whatnot. Now, you mentioned you worked with ExactTarget prior to it being acquired by Salesforce. So can you tell a bit more about that era and how has that changed since the acquisition?
Well, definitely the platform has changed from the days, and this is for the legacy users, from the days of the WYSIWYG tool or ET1 to now ET2, where we now have data extensions and journeys. So definitely the platform has changed, but most importantly, the community overall has changed. 14 years ago when I started using it, I worked at Johnson & Johnson, and I was sending emails out for the IOC, which is the International Olympic Committee, for track and field and for gymnastics. And I remember sending out emails. I didn't know who to contact. I didn't know who else was a user of the platform. I didn't know where to go for help. I don't think even at that time, they had a portal where people can go and submit questions and kind of network with others, right? I felt I was on an island by myself. So I feel like there are two big things that have evolved since the acquisition of Salesforce, which is one, the platform, right? And two, the community has evolved where it's more disposable at your fingertips almost, that you can reach out and feel that you're supported by others, right? If we think about Stack Exchange and Slack and, the Trailblazer community,
Oh, for
right?
sure.
And most important, now you can get certified, which didn't exist before, right? So you have all these different ways where you can upskill that didn't exist, 14 years ago when I started using the platform.
That's very interesting, but there was something you mentioned there that I sort of stumbled over. You mentioned in ET1 there was a time before data extensions.
Oh my God, yes, there was. It was for my back to my legacy users, there was a time where we didn't have data extension. We had to upload list. And
The
every
lists, yeah.
time, yes, we had to upload a list. And every time you wanted to send a new campaign, you would import a list.
Right.
And, it was one of those moments where you would spray and pray, or where the email blast term was popular. I'm just going to upload list, send. Deliverability, I didn't even know. Well, who knew about deliverability, right? We were sending animated GIFs. I remember building campaigns where I would have, animals, popping in, popping out. Things were flashing. I was using fireworks to create my animations, throw it in an email, spray, pray, send, upload list, done. That
Is
was,
there still is there still like an email left of the one of those emails? Do you still have it somewhere? Because that would be great if you could share that.
Oh, absolutely. I have several of those emails still saved. And, and I laugh. I laugh, but it's also a great example of growth, right? And how the email, has evolved over time, where I look at this email, I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe I still had a job after sending these emails. Because I'm like, who did this? I'm like, oh my God, I did, because I didn't know any better, because I was, on an island by myself. But I know now where if anybody, comes into the ecosystem of Marketing Cloud and they're looking for help, I have so many different places where I could say, oh my God, there's a great group, that's sitting here in Slack that you can go to. There's the Trailblazer community, right? There's so many different options now versus, 14 years ago, I had like 8 different colors, 5 different fonts, black background, hard to read, all in one email. And I thought I was like,
Oh yeah, those were the wild days of
right.
email design
Right. Exactly. I was like, I deserve an email award for that.
well, if we can get our hands on one still, we'd be happy to put it on the website and refer our viewers to it. I'm sure that people will recognize that time.
Absolutely. I don't mind sending it to you and do not ever do this, but this is just example of how we've all evolved, especially if, you're 15 year into email marketing. You were there at one point where you were sending wild animated GIFs using fireworks. And if you were using ExactTarget, you were using what they had called the WYSIWYG tool, right? Where you had like tables.
What you see is what you get. Yeah.
You had the what you see is what you get, and you were importing your list, and you would just send, and we weren't worried about canned spam, deliverability, not 14 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, who knew what a DNS was, right? So
Right. We didn't know that. We didn't know that thing. It's just wild how, when you think back, how things have evolved, platforms have evolved, the community has evolved where it's more family style, right? Versus island style, where you're not by yourself.
Indeed. Now, if we fast forward to your time now at Salesforce, you originally came from the customer side. And I know that at some point you were a member of the Salesforce Marketing Cloud Customer Advisory Board. I was curious about that too. Could you share a bit more about that, please?
So as a customer, I was very vocal, right? I'm one of those people where I'm really loyal to brands, and the loyalty also includes me sharing with them, not just sharing, but wanting to be part of the evolution of the platform. And, when I worked at some of these large organizations, I worked at Liberty Mutual, Johnson and Johnson, Boston Consulting Group. I was very passionate about the platform. I loved using the platform, but I would always raise my hand and use my voice and share with them positive feedback to help with, the overall direction of the roadmap. And I was also never afraid to raise my hand or introduce myself whenever I would go to connections, for example, right? I would make it a point to introduce myself to, Scott McCorkle, Scott Dorsley,
Great.
Chip,
Wow.
DP. I would introduce myself and say, hi, I'm Gilda from this and this company. I'm really excited about, the platform, where it's going. I have some feedback, or please include me. So being part of these customer advisory boards or these user group studies or voice of customer, it really allowed me to feel like I was part of a change. So I always made myself available to take part in this. And what I loved is that they kept their promise to me, and they kept me aware of the roadmap, where things were going. And it wasn't salesy at all. It was always more of informational, and it allowed me to feel closer and connected with the brand.
Right. It's not about pushing new features. It's a conversation that you're having.
Right. It was a conversation. And the other thing it allowed me to was to network with others, because you remember back then we didn't have user groups. We didn't have community. They just started scratching the surface on what they had called, interactive marketing hub and user groups, right? They just started scratching the surface when I started joining these customer advisory boards. So joining those boards allowed me to meet with other customers using the product and sharing best practices. And some of these folks that I met years ago, I still keep in touch with them from time to time.
Oh, and I can testify those user groups work very well. I mean, we're in different regions, but I'm a member of both the Belgian and the Dutch user group, and they're great communities. And one of them, we even have a WhatsApp group, and people like chat and have laughs. So it really works.
It does. It really does.
And you mentioned that essentially people listened to you when you gave input. Is there like one thing that was picked up on and delivered that you felt, I'm happy that I was able to contribute to that and give input on that?
The one thing I can remember was, I remember when they were first launching the Interactive Marketing Hub platform, and we had an offsite where they presented to us the vision of Interactive Marketing Hub. And I remember as part of the user group, we went through it. We went through our use cases. We were totally unbiased. We went in there unbiased because we'd never seen the platform. They didn't tell us beforehand what they were showing us. We kind of just logged in, and they just said, just walk through some of these steps. And then it was after we walked through after we walked through all these steps from logging in on the machine, that's when they said, so what did you guys feel about that experience? And we shared it. And that's when they said, this is what we're considering for, this interactive marketing hub community platform. And then we gave our feedback, like, oh, that's what that was. We were wondering why you had us walking through this. It didn't have their brand or anything, right? Which is a great way for them to get unbiased feedback, because we thought it was a competitor site. We thought it was a customer website, but it was actually a community site that they were building. And when they finally released and launched it, a lot of the feedback from the user group, from being part of the customer advisory board, was part of the platform.
So just to make sure I get this right, this was a session where you literally went to an office, they put you in front of a computer, and then they showed you something.
Yeah, they showed us something. It didn't have the logo on it, right? They wanted us to walk through this series. They had a couple of things that they wanted us to do and to just kind of navigate by ourselves. They gave us, 45 minutes to walk through navigation. Again, completely unbranded. And it was after the 45 minutes was up, they asked us, to write questions, concerns. And that's when they shared with us that this is what they're thinking of launching for the Interactive Marketing Hub.
That's awesome. So that was organized probably by the product development side of the Salesforce organization.
Correct.
All right, cool. So if we then look at more recent features, because there have been a few great releases, are there features that you are very excited about that you think our customers should be using?
The feature I remember, and this is just for me, the feature that I remember that years ago I was part of the beta testing, and I'm happy to see the evolution of this, has to be Journey Builder. While it may not be something that is recent, I just want to speak to the ability for us now to create I'll call it a tree branch, right? Because when you think of Journey Builder, it's like a tree where you can create different branches, right? You can send people off different branches based on data that you've collected from them, right? And it's not like Automation Studio where you're sending them on one linear path, but with Journey Builder, right, you can send an email, you can send an SMS message, you could push them to an ad, you can even send them to a call center, right? I think for me, it's when that launched, and although it was years ago, and I still, evolutions being made to Journey Builder, I think for me, like that to me is still one of the coolest feature that exists, is the ability to map out the different branches that you want to take your customer. And this is all based off of information that you've collected on them. And it's information that you've collected in real time. I remember I worked for an organization where the developers built a robo-dial, right?
Yeah. Okay.
And the robo-dial was part of one of the branches for the customer's journey, where they would automatically send the customer through their phone a text message reminding them of an upcoming appointment. And in addition to that, another path on the journey, if it wasn't the robo-dial, was here's an email, right? Here's a call center, right? Here's a newsletter, right? And this was all different paths that they were sending the customer on. Again, while this may not be a recent feature to me, it's still one of those features where if you're a developer, if you're an architect, if you're a channel marketer, if you're a data science, you all should be sitting in a room strategizing on how can we maximize utilization of Journey Builder with our entire, marketing strategy.
I remember actually attending a partner community event, and that's also where I learned to refer to the Journey Builder as the heart of Marketing Cloud. It's even like visualized like that often.
Correct. And the other thing with Journey Builder is you can pull in other marketing cloud features and functionalities like Einstein optimization, right? Like Service Cloud, Sales Cloud. So when you think about Journey Builder, it's not a single standalone tool, but all these other new features, new functionalities that are being launched out of Marketing Cloud, you can tag all of those into one single journey of that customer. Again, it's not a new feature, but it's still one of those features that excites me, that you can do all of this, right? Branching within one interface. And then the wealth of data that you're collecting is amazing, right? You then have all this plethora of data that you could then take, and you can now strategize on what worked, what didn't work, what's the next step, right? How do we keep our customer engaged and involved, right?
Got it. Great. Now, obviously, we at DESelect, we think that Marketing Cloud is a great platform to build on because that's what we're doing. But how do you think that new independent software vendors or ISVs, as they're commonly referred to, how can they provide the most value to the platform today?
And this may not be a right or wrong answer, but honestly, I always encourage everyone to, you don't know what you don't know. So learn as much as you can about the platform itself, right? Because if you think about it, the platforms are always continuing to evolve, especially with, there's there's 4 or 6 releases per year. So things are always changing, things are always evolving. And I've always said it myself, there's no offense to everybody, there's no certification there's no amount of legacy users that can ever say, I know everything there is to know about Marketing Cloud, because there's always a new feature, a new functionality, a new way of doing things that you never ever can think about. There's always a new use case, right? So I feel like we constantly have to push ourselves, right? To be ready to be uncomfortable with raising our hands and saying, you know what, wow, I never thought about this. I never knew that I could do that. Like right now, I work with an amazing community, and there's a Marketing Cloud community. Shout out to them. They know who they are. And, you know, when I have these events, I brainstorm with them, right? Because these are legacy users. There's some that are 4-time Marketing Cloud MVPs, right? They're marketing champions. Some you've worked with.
Oh, so we're having some on the series.
Yeah. So, and with some of them, every time, you know, we come together as a group and say, okay, what about this topic? Do you think this is something we should talk about? And for them to say, you know what? I've never even used this feature. Like, I actually want to have somebody from product present on this, because even as a 3-time or 4-time MVP, you still have so much to learn about. And that's why my favorite phrase is never stop learning, right? And so that's the only feedback that I would give to any ISVs, is that, you know, keep pushing yourself to learn. And if there's something that is not being presented on, ask, right? And I always say that to the community, you know, let me know if there's something that you're interested in learning more about, and I will go above and beyond to make sure that it's part of I say technical session, because I want the community to know how the onion was made, right?
All right.
And so I challenge everyone, like, if there's something you want to learn about, let me know, and I'll go above and beyond and add it to the schedule and make sure that, you know, you understand how the onion is made, so that you can now turn around and help support your clients, your customers.
Right. And I also liked how you pointed out that aside just keeping learning with and keeping up with this ever-changing platform, to talk directly with the customers and have your own product development involved. It's something that we also aspire to. Our CTO right now is having interviews directly with customers and partners to see what makes sense to them, what can we help to do better. So I think that's great advice. Going further into these days, being a marketer can be a stressful job, and especially during these times of the pandemic and all the uncertainty that it brings. What would you recommend to fellow marketers out there to keep up with the difficulties that they currently may be facing?
You know, when the pandemic started, like, I honestly just froze. And, you know, I struggled with, what do I do? Do I stop what I'm doing? So just to go back a bit, prior to, you know, when, you know, before the pandemic started, I was actually supposed to go on a 8-10 city tour just to meet with Trailblazers and customers, and to have a conversation with them to help understand, like, how can I help you? I'm a people person. Everybody knows I'm a people person. Love my community. You know, most of the community, they have my phone number, they have my email address. I make myself readily available to everybody. So going on this tour was just to really get a deeper insight and better understanding of the community needs. So when the pandemic started, everything stopped. I kind of stopped and didn't know what do I do, right? You know, do I continue with doing these virtual? So I struggled a bit, because I wanted to make sure that I was still supporting my community. And I remember the one thing that I did is I actually reached out to the community, right? To get their support and to get their understanding. Like, do you guys think I should stop? Should we keep going? And they're like, no, people need distraction, especially now, right? If you think about it, if you are home alone, right, you can't go outside, you can't network virtual, you know, in person, you're not near your family. The best distraction, somebody said to me, is still being able to connect virtually, whether it's whether it's the webinars, whether it's through happy hours, whether it's virtual movie nights, whatever you can do to get that person's mind off of their current situation is the best thing that you can do. The other thing that is to be willing to open up and talk to others about what you're going through and how they can help you. And that's one of the reasons why I make myself really available. I only probably get like 4 hours of sleep per night. I'm usually up around 4, 5 a.m. And especially some of the Trailblazers that are outside the US, I'll text them, I'll send them, WhatsApp message. I'm on Slack, message them, hey, how are you? How's everything going? Do you need anything? What can I do to help? What can I do to support you? Is everything okay? But it's because we have to do that, right? We have to make it a point to check on others, to uplift and support, and find various ways where we can provide any little service helps in such a big way, like you wouldn't even realize it unless you did it.
It's a great way to keep people connected and prevent them from getting isolated, essentially.
Correct. And that's why, continuing to do the virtual sessions that I'm doing is because, we may not be able to meet in person because we didn't have connections, Dreamforce is on hold and other virtual conferences around the world, user group meetings, everything's just virtual now. I wanted to make sure that we were still giving them an avenue to feel connected with the community and to also continue learning, right? So I wanted to make them feel like they still had those things at their fingertips, because when you go to Dreamforce, you go to Connections, you go to learn about new product features, you hear from others about best practices, tips, tricks, how they're using the platform, but most importantly, you go to network. And by having these events, I wanted everyone to still feel like it's just a virtual Connections. Every 2 weeks, Guilda's having a virtual Connections. Let's join.
Well, we should definitely also put that link in the description of the video. So we'll do that for our viewers. You also mentioned learning. So many of our listeners are quite experienced SFMC experts, actually. But for those that are new to the platform, what would you recommend to people starting their career on SFMC? What would you recommend them to learn? How can they stay connected with their fellow Trailblazers?
That is a great question, because 14 years ago, I didn't have that.
Oh, yeah, we've been there, yeah.
That didn't exist for us. One of the advice that I would give to all the newcomers, right? People that are just, crawling their way inside the marketing cloud is to, be willing to connect with others. Right. There are times where you start learning something and you get frustrated, but it never occurs to you that there are other resources out there. For example, the Marketing Cloud Trailblazer community, it's on 24/7. There are a lot of people that are asking questions. And what I love about the Marketing Cloud Trailblazer community is you ask a question, you'll get 6 different people that are jumping in, trying to help you solve it. And I've seen firsthand where folks are like, here's my email address, email me directly, and we can connect offline, and then problem solved, right? So that's number one, where it's like the Trailblazer community is there at your fingertips to help you. And it's not just Marketing Cloud product folks helping you, it's the community helping you.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Right, so that's number one. Number two is definitely go on and look through the Marketing Cloud trails. There's so many different trails available to help you better understand the various features, functionalities of the Marketing Cloud. So make it a point to go to trailblazer.com and to take some of the trails that are available to help you walk through and understand what is available, how do I use it, what's the benefit to using it. And it's not just hard skills, but there are also soft skills as well. And then other than that, you'll find there are so many different amazing community members building sites that is continuing to help you upskill. You have Slack channel. There's an email Slack channel that is awesome.
Yeah.
Hundreds of people are on there sharing best practices. And I've even seen it where you'll share a piece of code and say, I'm struggling. I don't know why it's working. 20 different people are helping you on this. And like I said, what I love is here's my phone number, here's my email address, happy to help you. There's Stack Exchange, there's How to SFMC, and there's a lot of community members with some amazing blogs that, again, it's upskilling you.
I love that you mentioned How to SFMC, because actually we had Gregory Gifford on one of the previous episodes.
Yes, and Greg is part of my committee, my crew.
I guessed so, yeah.
And what I love about the How to SFMC, and this is a great example of, a community seeing a need and saying, you know what, we're going to fill the gap. And the need was, at some point, your career trajectory from Marketing Cloud is, I'm a newcomer, I'm just learning, right? A couple of years later, you're like, okay, I'm now on that advanced trajectory level, right? And the How to SFMC team is coming in, they're saying, we see a need to fill a gap, and that gap is we want to do more of deep dive, that technical how-to stuff to help the community within the Marketing Cloud. So that's one of the things I love about partnering with them. And they're also helping me so that, I'm aware of what are some of the things that the community, they're like my eyes and ears, right? What are some of the things that the community is interested about, right? So whenever I have these events, I don't just do it without approval from the community, right? I want to make sure that everything that I do, it's aligning with the community's need. And then I'm not just, running out in the wild doing things by myself without the support. Own thing. Yeah, right. No, the community means a lot to me. So I value everyone's feedback.
Great. And besides Marketing Cloud resources and how to stay connected there specifically, just given your extensive marketing experience, what would you recommend to marketers to stay up to date with the latest marketing trends in general?
Oh my God, that's a great question. The way I stay is really through social media. And what I mean by that is like, I sign up to a lot of blogs, right? So there's Twitter is number one, LinkedIn's another place, but Litmus is another place where I sign up for the blogs because I want to know, what is the latest and the greatest. But there's also additional blogs that I make sure that I log in, I sign up for their newsletters just so I stay up to date and know exactly what some of the features and functionalities that are coming out.
Right, and I read the Litmus report on best email service provider, so we know who that is. So
right, and then another favorite for me is like eMarketer. Love eMarketer. I sign up to get their newsletters. Return Path is another favorite of mine, where I want to make sure I know all there is to know about deliverability and canned spam and all the changes. So I make it a point to just sign up the newsletters, and then whenever they have an upcoming webinar, I attend just to kind of stay in the loop. And I encourage everybody to do the same thing too.
All right. Now, as for Twitter, I'm personally curious because I really need to step up my Twitter game. Do you have any tips there? And is there anyone I should follow?
Years ago, before my role at Salesforce, I don't think I was big on Twitter. I was like, 160 characters.
Yeah, I'm the same. I still don't get it fully.
What can I get out of Twitter? But it has since started working at Salesforce, it's like been one of my favorite go-to. 5:00 in the morning, I wake up and I'm on Twitter, right?
Really? Wow.
Because I love seeing, I'll call them the snippets of what people have to say, right? And a lot of times it's, eureka, I just figured out how to do, and then it's like 3 bullets, boom, 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 but it's short, it's sweet, and it's straight to the point, right? It's not a long paragraph. And what the beauty of that is you can immediately reply, way to go. There are a lot of people getting certified and they'll post their certification. That's a great way to uplift and support and motivate that person and say, oh my God, great job, keep going. Or if somebody didn't pass their test, what I love is when they say, I didn't pass, but I'm not going to let that stop me. 50 tweets later, everybody's like, motivating them to keep moving forward. Twitter has become my number one go-to just to hear what the community's doing. And it's my way of supporting them promoting them, and being their advocate. So I love Twitter. It's just my thing now. I'm a tweet girl.
I definitely have to look more into it, but it's certainly popular amongst Salesforce employees. I can tell. Maybe it has something to do with the fact that Mark Benioff at one point considered buying it, and he's an avid tweeter. I follow his tweets with great pleasure. So I think we can almost round up here. But do you have any closing thoughts that you would like to share with our audience today?
The one closing thought is never stop learning. Right. And some people might say, well, that's harder. It's hard. It's easier to say than to do. But, with the way that the community is today versus what it was, 14 years ago when I was sending my animated GIFs, I'm using fireworks. It's completely different. Never stop learning, and, make it a point to get comfortable with a community that's all about love, caring, and knowledge transfer, right? It's something that I never thought I would experience, when I started my career in email marketing, and to see the way it has completely transitioned, right? Where even on Twitter, let me just go back to Twitter for 1 second. Even on Twitter, I've seen people say, I'm having trouble with, and then the community just jumps in and they volunteer to help, right? And it's just, to me, just an example of how powerful we are as a unit than as a single person just trying to figure things out by themselves. So I encourage everybody to never stop learning. And I encourage everybody to, become a member of the community. Like you said, Trailblazer Marketing Community, Slack, Stack Exchange, How to SFMC, and be sure to also follow other Marketing Cloud advocates. You mentioned Greg Gifford before. There's Adam Spriggs, there's Elliot Harper, there's Karina Cohan, right? There's Jenna Matson, there's Zuzana, there's Marcus. There's so many great community leaders out there that is sharing blogs. They're sharing, their best practices, advice. I see them as thought leaders in the community.
Oh, yeah.
Follow them, right? And these are the folks that are willing to help out. So never feel embarrassed to reach out and ask for help.
Great stuff, Guilda, and a great community, of course. It was a pleasure having you for this interview, and thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me. It was my pleasure.